Welcome to another edition of Woman to Woman. We are so glad that you joined us today. And today we have our guest today is going to help us on actually making us more aware of a very important issue. Frankie Hing has a heart for serving others and has followed the call of God for most of her life. After being ordained by Bishop Keith Butler in 1994, she spent time working and volunteering with numerous organizations that provide services to others. She has served as a teaching ministry in the San Francisco County Jail, the Women of the Way Recovery Home in Alameda County, and the Woman of Faith in Haywood, California, to name a few. She also interned with the San Francisco DA's office, providing input on alternative sentencing case reviews. Currently, she is the founder and executive director of CLEAR, a ministry directed to human trafficking awareness and prevention. Please welcome with me Frankie Hing. Hi, Frankie.
Hi, Pastor Deborah. Thank
It's,
you for having me.
oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for being with me. Um, I want to introduce what we're going to talk about with something that I just came to my attention. Um, we have friends who have a ranch in Texas, maybe 5 to 10 miles from the border. And someone was asking, I don't know who it was. I'm not going to give you any names because they didn't tell me this was confidential. Um, but they didn't wasn't telling me to broadcast it either. So I'm not giving any names. So don't write me and ask me who it was or where. But um, all you getting is Texas for me, because we know that's a border state. But anyway, they have a ranch down there, and one day his their ranch hand, a person in charge there, called him and said that there was a big hole had been cut in the fence, and that not only had they cut the fence, but then they put it back up like it wasn't there. So they clipped it. They didn't. They just clipped it so it was there, and so they told the owner of the ranch told them to video it to find out what was going on. So they set up a video camera, whatever the case, to find out what was going on. And what was happening was you had child um, people that were bringing children through there. So the hole was big enough to bring a group of children through, and they were using it very regularly in order to exploit the children through human trafficking. Now, we know that if it happened in one ranch, it's happening in more ranches. Because one of the things he was saying is if they're just running through the ranch to get into the country, they don't cut a hole, they just climb over the fence. So that's what it was so important to do. But they were using it over and over again. And one of the things, these are the things that we do not hear from our media. Um, but I can't say that there is a lot of, or some states who are supplying their National Guards to go down and help protect our children and to make sure that property is not being used to do that with where children are, to traffic the children. And this is something as women and as parents and as human beings that we have to all be aware of. Not only do you have to tell your children, because it's not just happening in different countries, it's also happening here. You have people here, bad actors here, who help the bad actors from different countries to get these children in and sometimes to get our children out. And it's time for us to stop sitting on our behinds and do something about it. And that's what you're doing. Is your organization is doing, and helping to make us more aware of it. But I think it's all very hurtful to realize that's happening. But I think the most hurtful thing out of this whole process to me is that our media is not being truthful with us. They're not telling us. They're not letting us know what's going on, and in order for them to get their agenda through. And you can't play with the kids. And we have to put our foot down. We are citizens of the United States. The people in Washington are working for us, but they acting like we're working for them. It is our tax money that they're spending to ignore these issues. And I'm not in agreement with my tax money going through for that. And we have to stand up as a people and become verbal about it, and to let them know you can no longer do that. I mean, they don't pay attention to what we're saying because we keep voting them in. So you gotta, if you tell them and they don't do it, like I read an article just morning that they put they put someone on investigation of these schools, and they are still teaching CRT. They just changed the name of it. That should not be. So we need to get involved. We have to get involved.
Right. This is so much larger than we even realize.
Yes, it is.
And one of the things that was so painful and hurtful for me is activity that was going on at the border that you just referenced, but you and your audience may recall that there was actually a video camera of two children that were dropped over a border wall. One looked to be about 3 years old, the other 5, and they were just dropped over the wall alone. There was no adult with them. And thank God, Border Control was right there to observe that and to escort them. Those are two children that we saw. But it is our understanding now that there have been more than 20,000 children who have come across the border without having a parent or a guardian that has been vetted or proved that that child is in fact related to them. And they, like many others, have now disappeared into the society of the United States. We are also hearing reports that those children are being used not only for sex trafficking, but also for labor trafficking. So in places like restaurants, or in places like nail salons, or in places like factories, which are other areas where forced labor and human trafficking occurs. Sex trafficking is just so large, but it is such a hidden crime. And we only know the tip of the iceberg about it. In looking at and doing research in this area, I came to understand that in order for this crime to occur effectively, there had to be 3 elements to it. One, there always had to be a likely offender. And we know just from the few reports that come through the news, the kinds of people that are offending or that are involved in human trafficking and sex trafficking of children. We've seen reports where, 5 people at Disneyland that were employees, or Disney World, were sex traffickers. We've seen instances where you've found coaches, and this happens because often children are left without regulation for the devices that they are on. I often say to people, who is sleeping with your child at night because their devices open them up to any and
Yeah.
everyone. So likely offenders through the devices. The second thing is, in order for this crime to occur, there has to be a suitable target. And those suitable targets are people who are just vulnerable or unaware of just the crime itself or how rapidly and how deceptively the crime occurs. So children can be suitable targets. We know of adults who have been targets of sex trafficking. They think they're talking online with someone who is romantically interested in them, and they end up meeting that person somewhere, finding out that that person is not who they profile themselves to be online. And unfortunately, many times they are not seen from or heard from for years.
Yeah.
The third way that this crime occurs is there is a lack of a capable guardian. And this is the aspect of human trafficking awareness and prevention that the Lord charged me with, that there needs to be an awareness that this is going on, how it goes on, so that people who are responsible for other people can be capable guardians,
Yes.
equipped with wisdom to know and understand how human trafficking occurs, where it occurs, and then how to ensure that it does not occur with anyone that you have oversight or guardianship over, or any of your loved ones.
Yep.
One of the things that I was so blessed to learn early on, me and my husband, was in sitting in your teaching, sitting under your teaching, you actually wrote a book on marriage and family and maintaining healthy relationships. There was a core part of that book where you talked about the 4 types of relationships. You said there are acquaintances, there are casual friends, there are close friends, and then there are intimate friends. And what we've seen with the access to social media is so often people go from 0 to 60. They go from the acquaintance online to divulging intimate information, the type of information that in times past we would reserve for the intimate friends. So these are how predators online can start to elicit information from your loved ones. And often they think they are talking to someone that is a peer. They usually talk to people where they have a common interest. For instance, one of the most rapidly growing areas of sex trafficking is with boys ages 9 to 17, because they are the largest segment of the population who are involved in gaming online. And anytime you have an online platform where you have a public chat, that person or those people have access to your loved ones.
Yes.
And so we often say to people, it is so vitally important that you understand who your loved one is talking to online.
Yes.
And making sure that that loved one is not moving the conversation from a group chat to an individual chat, because that's when the grooming process really starts to take place.
That is why it's so important that as parents, we learn how to talk to our children. We learn how to communicate to them and listen to them. Now, just because you listen to them don't mean that you agree with what they're saying, but listen to them, because it tells you how your child is thinking. And if you know how your child is thinking, then you'll know if you have a problem. But What happens nowadays is we just spit them out and let them come up on on their own. And one of the things that the government is backing is the fact that these kids can make their own decisions. This
Mm,
is all feeding into this. Because if they can make their own decisions, you feel like, okay, well, I don't have to. I can just let them do what they want to do. No, you cannot let your child know do what they wanted to do. If you let a child choose their breakfast, they're going to have rotten teeth. Period.
right.
Because they're going to eat chocolate. They're going to eat sweets. That's what they're going to eat all the time. And yes, there's a time for maybe they can have a donut, because you're in a hurry or whatever. But that is not an everyday thing. But that's what kids will pick all the time. They can't even pick their clothes out. And we're trying to tell them, they can tell you if they feel like they're a boy or a girl. No, kids they would experience anything that you allow them to experience. And so that you cannot allow the government or anybody else to dictate to you what you should do with your children. You have to follow the laws of God. God loves those children. They are not yours and they're not the government's. They are God's children that He has made you responsible for as a parent. And if you don't take care of them, you're going to have to answer to God for it, period. So that's a start. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to be in trouble. Um, you will find yourself doing things without God's protective hand on you. Because God is interested in those kids. And one of the things I've said before is when Jesus said, if you touch one of these, if you hurt one of these little ones, it would be worse for you that a millstone be hung around your neck and you drowned in the depths of the sea. So we need to think about what's worse than that. What's worse than, because a millstone being put around your neck and you dropped in the sea, that means pretty much a quick death. But what's
Right.
worse than that is torture. And so I think I know you need to think about that. We all need to think about that because that involves any child that is left under your protection. For instance, if your child has a friend and their parents let them come to your house, you are supposed to protect them. You're supposed to keep an eye on them. So many of these kids get snatched because adults are not paying attention. And these people will watch you long enough to see when you're not watching. I mean, I see commercials and stuff when mothers are in the park and they're talking among each other, and anybody can come in there and snatch those kids because you're not watching, you're not paying attention. And that's our responsibility. It's not making ourselves happy, it's about protecting those kids. And we are grown, so we have to learn how to be responsible for what God has put in our care and protect your own children. But again, another
Yes.
thing is making the kids aware. You can make them aware without scaring them. One of the things that I remember Bishop and I talked to our kids about is if an adult or anybody says to you, don't tell your parents, that's what you better tell me. That's what you better tell me right away. Don't tell you, this is just private between me and you. No, you have no privacy as a child. You have to tell me everything, and we can talk about everything. But you have to be open to that, which means the other thing is that you have to learn how to control your face. Because if the child thinks that they're shocking you or making you angry, they're going to clam up. So you have to learn how to control your face so you can be the parent that you're supposed to be for your kids.
That was a very valuable lesson for my husband and I in raising our son.
Hmm.
As you're aware, we have a 21-year-old son.
Hmm.
And we learned very early on, just like you said, that in order to keep open lines of communication and in order for them to feel comfortable in disclosing
Hmm.
information, whatever they said, we could not show the expression of being shocked or immediately angry or any kind of expression that would cause him to shut down.
Right.
And one of the things that I used to notice as a mom was when I would sit with him at night for a few minutes before bedtime,
Mm-hmm.
that was when his heart became open.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when he would share with me information regarding maybe something that had gone on at school that bothered him, or something that a classmate had said or was doing, or even something that he was interested in that he had not approached us with up to that point.
Right.
So recognizing when those opportunities are,
Mm-hmm.
as a parent, recognizing when does my child talk to me the most, and recognizing that that is a time where they are being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really important to listen, and of course, to be able to share the word of God with them so that they have an anchor in their heart
Yeah.
for direction.
Right. It's also a time. It's the funny thing because I can hear people saying, "Oh, they just didn't want to go to sleep," but but that might be true because they will do whatever they need to do to stay up. We know that. That's just what children are. And I don't know.
Sure.
We as adults are not like that. Then when it's time to go to bed, we're going to bed because we
Right.
know we're going to get up with those kids. But sometimes that's still an opportunity that you need to take where you sit with your children and let them talk about what they want to do. Give them a time limit. You do have to, okay, you got 10 more minutes, then we're going to bed. And if you have a child that's used to doing that, then start earlier
Hmm.
so that, they still get the sleep that they need to, but now they go to sleep with a clear conscience where they're not dreaming about anything that happened during the day because you've already handled that. And they're going to be kids, so they're going to do what they do, to stay up way down. I want some water. I want some of this. I want, they're going to do that, and don't get upset because they do. That's what children do. If you talk to parents, you're going to find out you're not the only parent that their child don't want to go to bed. I have a grandson who, when it's time to go to bed, they're going to bed. But then I have one that is going to do whatever he can to stay up. And then he's the first one up in the morning. So that you just have to deal with that. That fact. Don't treat your children all the same because they're not the same. A lot of
Right.
parents get in trouble because of that because they treat them all the same. And they're not. They have different personalities, so you have to get before God and find out how to deal with them. And then as they get older, you can explain to the other children why you do different things, um, so that they can you can do with them and train them up the way God needs them to be because of what they're doing, or what He's called them to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So just pay close attention to what they're saying. Don't let them just say something and then you don't ask them about it. Because sometimes they'll fill you out. They'll just toss something out there, and you just think, oh, they just acting crazy. Well, maybe they're not. Maybe that's an issue that they don't know if they can talk to you about. And that's part of being a parent is being aware of those things, and not just letting your kids just feel like that okay, so and so did this, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I had to tell my kids if I don't do it, if you don't see me or your daddy do it, or me and your daddy say it, then you don't say it and you don't do it because kids need guidance. And if you
Hmm.
don't get guidance, they're going to get the guidance from their so-called friends. And that's not right because they don't even know what they're doing.
Exactly. Exactly. And you mentioned, the difference in children's personalities and their uniqueness
Hmm.
because of what God called them to do. That is another reason why making ourselves aware
Hmm.
of what is going on with human trafficking is so important, because when a child has an interruption in their life
Hmm.
of this nature, what it can do sometimes is temporarily take them off course
Yeah.
from the plan of God for their lives. Now we know that God can always work with a heart to get them back on course, to heal them. But one of the great things about having a parent, a capable guardian, is that that parent is watching over, can be attuned to the plan and purpose of
Mm-hmm.
God for that child's life and help to ensure that they are not hindered in fulfilling that plan. You know, we Jeremiah 29:11, we all know that God says, I know the purposes and the plans I have for you, plans of good
Mm-hmm.
and not of evil, to give you a hope and an expected end. So he's got a destination for
Yes,
those
he does.
children. And we don't want to be lax in helping them stay on track and stay on target for that God given destination.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that always the plan of God has people attached to it. So everyone has something that God desires for them to do that is going to be a blessing to other people.
Yes.
So when we see things like that happen, it can also interrupt that plan. And praise God, there's healing, there is help, but it's better to not have to deal with the detour and to
Right.
stay on track.
The other issue is that if you have a child or you know a child that have been through something like that, whether it's in their home or in somebody else's home, the worst thing that you can do where that child is concerned is ignore it. That child needs to be able to let it out, to talk about it. And because if the child doesn't talk about it, they're going to grow up with that whole thing and nobody has taken the time to make it right. So they know, and the number one area where they are going, and we all know this, the number one area where they're going to the blockage is they're going to blame themselves. And they're
Mm-hmm.
too young to take the blame. It happened to them. You know, this is none a reason why we wouldn't let our kids go places and spend the night unless we knew the parents, we knew who was going to be in the house, we knew, um, that the boys weren't going to be around our girls or whatever the case may be. Otherwise, you come to my house because no, I don't understand why parents don't pay closer attention to that. I don't understand why parents don't realize why they don't think. I didn't want my kids to be traumatized at all.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Mm-hmm.
means I had to go to the extreme to make sure that didn't happen. You know, now what happens to them in school and stuff will be different things, but um, I took care of it. I know one of my daughters had an instance at school where somebody hit her, and of course she beat them up, and threw them in a trash can, and they expelled her. But the policy of the school was whoever threw the first punch was in trouble. They were the ones that caused the problem. Now, just because she punched back, and kids everybody get angry. You hit me, I'm angry. So I'm going to defend myself. Everyone has the right to defend themselves, and so we had them take it off her. You got to take that off her record because that wasn't her fault. This child was older than her, and she really shouldn't have had to deal with the issue at all. But she did, and she did well, and we told her we were proud of her because she was defending her younger sister, um, which is what she was supposed to do. Because we leave the kids with the thing: if you don't defend your younger sister, you're gonna have to deal with us when you get home. Her choice. I would rather deal with this person that's messing with
Right.
my younger sister than deal with my parents. She did the right thing, and she followed the policy of the school. She did not touch this girl until she touched her. But then we had to talk to her to guarantee because she had already went through all the stuff at school where they're telling her she was wrong and she shouldn't have did this and whatever and like that, and all those things. So we've had to straighten that out and let her know, no, you did the right thing. So, us, we didn't want her brother to have to take care of it. You know, that would have been worse. And he was trained not to get involved like that where it's concerned, but she did. And, you know, it's just, you have to talk to your kids about that. You can't just ignore it. You can't just, you know, sweep it up under the rug and go on with your life. You have to talk to them because that child is still dealing with that. You know, you have to do that. And again, the basic thing is we have to make your child aware of the world that they're living in. But you have to be able to do it without putting fear in them.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this episode of Woman to Woman.
What every Christian parent should know. Growing children up in the 21st century can be a daunting task. For Christian parents, however, it can and should be a joy to raise children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Ephesians 6:4. God has given us an instruction manual for living, His holy word, which includes instructions on how to raise godly children. In this book, Pastor Deborah L. Butler shares what she believes every Christian parent should know in order to raise their children in a way that's pleasing to God and that will prepare them for a future in Christ that knows no limits. Order your copy today in ebook and paper